Welcome. Our field trip this month is to Mount St. Helens. Oh, our field trip this month is to Mount St. Helens, where I hope that we might be able to visit the 8 caves if there's still some open reservations. But the Trail of Two Forests should be accessible. And I learned of another location that we might be able to go to that has to do with this lava flow we'll be talking about tonight. But right now we're just going to take a quick journey through the formation of a lava tube. And this will be a little bit different than our previous sessions where there have been specific things to sketch. Today it'll be more diagramming, and so I'll encourage you in a few places to kind of sketch diagrams and kind of give your brain opportunity to work with the material both from hearing and then also from drawing it out. So the first step of the formation of a lava tube is for there to be lava at the surface of the earth. So most of that molten material is down, deep beneath the crust, and but it can get to the surface in a variety of ways. The way that we're most familiar with, I think most people, is through the hot spots, which is what forms the Hawaiian Islands, for example. And so that's one of the most active volcanic areas I think that North Americans are aware of. And so in this diagram, can you see my cursor? You see my little arrow? No, let's see. Laser pointer. How about now? Whoops, I'm in the wrong one. You see a little red dot?
Yes.
Okay, so this is what this hotspot image here, or this part of the diagram, is what's forming Hawaiian Islands. Now, our range of mountains here in Washington, Oregon, Cascades, those are actually a range of volcanoes, and they are formed differently than the Hawaiian Islands. So let's see, I'm getting ahead of myself. I was talking about hotspots. Yeah, so scientists aren't sure exactly yet how hotspots form or what's going on, but they are basically an area where there's a fixed point beneath the surface of the earth that is causing the crust to weaken and magma to rise up to the surface. So magma is what liquid rock is called when it's underground, and when it comes to the surface, it's called lava. The lava and magma are basically the same thing. It's just different locations. One's exposed to the air and one is not. So the most famous hotspot is the Hawaiian Islands, but we also have a hotspot under the North American plate, which is where we live. And currently that hotspot is underneath Montana, and that's what's fueling all of the tectonic activity, all the hot springs and geysers under Yellowstone National Park. And lava from the hot spots is typically basaltic, so low silica content. And as a result of that, it flows, it's very liquidy. It's, if you were to compare it to some kind of a batter, it'd be more like pancake batter, where it can flow really smoothly across the landscape for long distances. The Cascade Mountains, which were created by volcanoes, formed in a completely different mechanism, overriding the Wanda Fuca plate. The continental plate, the North American plate, is a different rock structure, so it has a lot more silica in it, and the oceanic plate has a lot more basalt in it, and it is denser. And so when the two come together, the oceanic plate goes down and the continental plate rides over the top of it. So as the Wanda Fuca plate dives into the mantle, it becomes superheated, and you can see here in the diagram, when it gets to a certain point in the mantle, in addition to it becoming heated because the interior of the earth is so much hotter, it also has water on it, and the water lowers the melting temperature of the rock, which then encourages magma to form. So you have rock that's going back into a liquid form, and magma is less dense than the surrounding rock, so it percolates to the surface. And as it's traveling through, it's let's see, what am I trying to say? This area of melting is a mix of the Juan de Fuca plate and of the continental plate. And so you're getting a different rock composition here than you would if it was just one or the other. And in the case of Mount St. Helens, most of the magma that reaches the surface is called dacite. And the dacite, we have all these different types of rock that are basically names for a certain chemical composition of the rock, and dacite is high silica content. So the magma here has, as a result of having more silicates, that makes it more chunky when it comes to the surface. And it would be, rather than the pancake batter of the basalt flows, it's more like cookie dough. And it, as a result of that, it creates more explosive eruptions. This type of lava doesn't really have the right consistency to create lava tubes. So then the question is, how did we end up with lava tubes in our composite volcanoes here? And yeah, why is there a lava tube in Mount St. Helens? Oh, and I was going to have you sketch out this diagram really quick. So let's do a quick sketch here, just to capture whatever details, just 60 seconds, whatever details you feel are most appropriate or intriguing about this. Say 30 more seconds. Okay. All right, so Mount St. Helens typically erupts a high silica lava known as dacite. But it has, on at least 2 occasions in the past 2,500 years, had basaltic flows, along with several andesite flows, which is another high silica content. But it's the basalt flows that we're most interested in. And what we have here, a bit detailed for this, for projecting, but that's okay. I can get this PDF to you if you're interested. But what we're looking at on the right is a geolog map of Mount St. Helens pre-1980. And so what, if you were to look at this up close, you can see that there's lots of tiny little writing all over this. The page on the left is the legend explaining what all those different marks are, basically what all those different levels are, and what all these different numbers represent are different lava flows that they've mapped on the mountain. And the one that we are most interested in particular is, I highlighted it all in red. The largest continuous part of the flow is here, but there's also some little bits of it that are exposed under other lava flows off to the northwest a little bit. And this particular flow is called the cave fault flow, QCB1. And it was carbon dated to about 1900 years. Wait, 1900 years old? Yeah, that's right. So 1900 years ago, basalt flowed out of Mount St. Helens. And it's this flow that we're hoping to see later this month. And it was, yeah, well, I mentioned already, we're thinking about the Ape Cave and the Trail of Two Forests, basically some features that you're only going to get with a basalt flow. So basalt flows, like I said earlier, are less viscous. They flow across the surface like syrup or pancake batter. And the parts of the flow that are exposed to the air are prone to cooling, which allows them to solidify. And so all of the black surfaces that you see in this image are lava that has returned back or is in the process of returning back to rock, to solid rock. Rock is an amazing insulator, and so that crusty outer layer helps to keep the lava that's within hot and liquid. And so it ends up forming these tunnels that the lava can flow to. And this is part of the reason it's so dangerous to walk on lava fields, is because that crust, there can still be lava flowing underneath. Some lava tubes can go on, they can be active for years with lava flowing underneath them. But and it also allows these tubes allow that lava to travel long distances. So like on Hawaii, you've got the mountain that's erupting many miles from the sea. And because of this type of lava, the fact that it is so liquid and that it forms these kind of insulated layers that help keep the magma hot or the lava hot, then it can flow all the way down to the ocean. So they're kind of like a subway for lava. Now, that cool outer layer will continue to thicken over time, but if the flow stops before the surrounding material is thick enough, it'll collapse. And that's what's happened in the case here. This is a remnant from that last major eruption in Hawaii. I think it was in 2019. And this particular area was one of the most filmed sections because it was this amazing, beautiful, thick, wide river of lava. And you can see here, there were sections that were starting to crust over. It was attempting to build a lava tube, and all this crumbly stuff here, everything that was on top as the lava evacuated the riverbed, basically, and then all the hard stuff just kind of collapsed onto the floor. But sometimes lava tubes are active for a long enough period of time that outer layer can get thicker and thicker and thicker, and in some cases thick enough to support an entire forest above, which is the case in this tunnel. And I think it's called the Henderson Tunnel on Hawaii. And this is a very old tunnel. You can see that there's tree roots growing from the ceiling here. Now, eventually the lava will stop flowing and the tube drains out, leaving an empty cave. And as the surrounding rock continues to cool, hot rock is thicker than cold rock, right? So it kind of shrinks as it cools and causes lots of cracks in the cave walls. And in many cases, there will be sections of the cave that will collapse in. And this is how we end up finding lava tubes, is because sections have caved in. It's most of the damage, though, happens in the first years after the lava has stopped flowing. So this picture, for example, was taken at Craters of the Moon National Monument in Idaho, where the tubes are relatively close to the surface. You can see there's not a lot of space here. And in this area of Idaho, it gets really hot in the summer and it gets really cold in the winter. So they're dealing with some freeze-thaw issues, basically things that can encourage rock to break apart. And even in those circumstances, they haven't had any major collapses since the formation of the park in 1924. So I'm trying to say they're safer than it might seem at first. When you look at a collapse like this, like first time I saw this, I thought, oh my God, why am I in here? But then I learned that most of this occurs within, the early stages of the tube, as opposed to after it has completely cooled. So this is Dewdrop Cave at Craters of the Moon. And the area of this landscape was formed by the same hotspot that's currently under Yellowstone National Park. And in fact, it's that same hotspot is what created the basalt that you see in the Columbia River Gorge. So basically our continent has been moving west, and it's been traveling, well, it's kind of moving, what is it? I can't remember now, but it's moving across the top of the hotspot and is creating all these amazing geological features in the process, as well as some major major bad things. I can't remember the term. Anyway, sorry, I digress. We're not here to talk about the hazards. We're here to talk about lava tubes. So another type of lava tube that we're gonna see. Oh, actually, I wanted to back up a little bit. So I'd like to take a moment here. There wasn't a lot of information. I'm purposely trying to keep these shorter now, and but I'd like to take a moment with the little bit of information that I gave you to try and create a diagram of what you think the lava tube creation process looks like. So we'll do a quick review here. It starts out with the liquid lava flowing over the surface, basically flowing in a river that it's kind of like icing over, right? Only it's the rock instead of water. And then in some cases it collapses like here, but in other cases that roof is intact and it's stable enough to support a whole ecosystem above it. And in some places you get these skylights, these collapses where humans then can discover the cave and find a way in. So let's take just like maybe 2, maybe 3 minutes to sketch that out. And if there's a different image, if you want me to move it back and forth between images, just shout it out, and we can do that. Okay. So now I'm going to talk about the other kind of tube, lava tube, that we can find at Mount St. Helens. And these are tree molds. Tree molds are formed when basaltic lava flows through a forest. So this isn't the best example. This is a remnant forest survived that 2019 eruption on Hawaii. But you can see that you can imagine that there was a whole forest here. And if the conditions were right, as the lava flowed through here, some of the trees would have stayed intact long enough that the lava would form, basically take a cast of the tree. And then the tree would burn out, but that lava would remain, that hole where the tree had been would remain intact. Where we're going, at Mount St. Helens, it was an old growth forest that the lava flowed through. And some of the trees are down and some of the trees right. So you're going to see examples of both vertical tubes and horizontal tubes. But here's an example, just to give you an idea. It's surprising, for me anyway, the idea that a tree could fall on and make a mold. It just blows my mind. But these trees, oh, since my internet is unstable, but you can see these trees, they are still intact, even though they have tumbled and washed down this lava flow. So there was some burning involved. But here in this section, after this tree erodes away, there's going to be an impression of the tree left in the lava here. And then you can see there's another log here that's almost completely submerged. And then here's another log, and it's hard to say, but it's potentially also underneath the lava here. And so there's all sorts of future tree molds in this bed here, just waiting for the trees to go away. So here's an example of some of the tree molds at Mount St. Helens. And there's a vertical one where you can go down a ladder, and it's big enough that you can crawl down into it. And then here's a horizontal one that you can crawl through. And I don't have a good picture. I don't think either of these is clear enough to see, but the impressions of the bark can actually be seen in some of these locations. And so the tree survived long enough for that lava to cool and hold, to basically preserve that impression of the bark. You tell the species of the tree by the lava that's left behind. So let's take a moment and do a quick diagram of what that might look like. Lava flowing through a forest and preserving those trees, basically creating tree molds. And we'll do it in 3 minutes again. And again, this feature, you're not going to get this with their typical pyroclastic flows off of our Cascade Mountains because the lava is so chunky. But with the basalt flow, you can get it's smooth enough, it's runny enough where it can do amazing things like make casts of trees. Use 30 more seconds. Okay. So we're going to do a quick recap here. And I wanted you to draw your own diagrams before you saw somebody else's. So this is a diagram of how lava tubes form. And you can see it starts out with that volcanic eruption and the lava is flowing down the hillside. And then as it cools, it grows a shell over top, a crust, and eventually enclosing the river of lava. And eventually the lava flow will subside, leaving behind that lava tube. Would you like to make any additions or changes to your diagram? And take a moment. If we do have the opportunity to go to Mount St. Helens, to Ape Cave, there's some really cool features inside that there's so much more to this story than just this little surface that I'm giving it. So for example, you can see here that when the lava is subsiding, the size of the cave remains the same, even if the lava flow is changing within it. And if that lava is flowing through that cave for a long period of time, it can actually create benches and other really fascinating structures and evidence in the cave of what happened while the lava was flowing. And so you can actually see those some of those effects at the Ape Cave, which is fun. You also get a chance to look at the cave texture, which is the result of the heat and splattering of the lava as it flowed through. There's a lot of just amazing, wonderful details. But I mean, that's the case with anything, right? It's the more you look into it, the more amazing things there are to learn about it. All right, so this is how a lava tube forms, and then our tree casts or tree molds. These are, I found this from off of a paper called Lava Trees and Tree Molds of Mount Etna, but the process is pretty much the same. We don't have lava trees at Mount St. Helens that I'm aware of. Basically, the difference between lava trees and tree molds is in the lava trees, the level of the lava subsided, but that the part of the lava that was encasing the tree remains. And so then you actually have what looks like a tree of rock sticking up out of the ground. Not a tree, but like a rock sticking up out of the ground. Whereas a tree mold, the lava didn't subside, and so there's just your ground and with holes in it. And so that's what we're going to see if we go to the Trail of Two forests at the park. So if you'd like to make any adjustments to your diagram on tree molds, go ahead and do so now. I noticed when I was doing research for this that the researchers all reference the trees burning out after they've been encased. But from what I saw at Hawaii with those remnant trees, I got the impression that maybe the trees just decay over time. But it's probably a mix of both. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and wrap up. That's a wrap for how lava tubes are formed. Very surface level treatment, I know. I just wanted to get kind of the juices flowing and basically give you an opportunity to start generating some questions and thinking about what do you want to investigate further when we're actually on site. And also think about what kind of experiences have you already had with features like these and how might that influence your experience on the trip later this month. So just out of curiosity, what kind of questions did you come up with for this presentation? I mean, during this presentation.
Seems like if the tubes are going to form, they kind of form in a very specific distance from the event, because the temperatures would have to be kind of just right. If it's too hot, then they don't form. If it's too cold, they don't form, you know, and the tree molds as well. I mean, they either completely catch the tree on fire and it's gone and it just keeps flowing, or it's on the other end where it doesn't catch the tree on fire. It just goes around it. And then, like you said, it decays. But if it's forming it has to be just that right distance away where it can be cool enough that it flows around it and doesn't completely obliterate it. But so that was one of the things I was thinking, well, on both of these, kind of like the conditions have to be just right.
Yeah, that's a really good observation. Now I'm curious. I wonder if anyone's done a paper on that yet, because it seems like it'd be pretty easy to track that down. You know, just look at what's that?
I would think that, I'm sure somebody has. I don't think that was a real original thought, but it was one of the things I was thinking, you know, especially with the trees, you know, I mean, they're either completely gone and dust, right? Or it's the other way where it's not hot enough really for them to completely burn.
Yeah.
For them to kind of hot enough for it to flow, still be flowing around and catch the tree on fire, so to speak. But it's interesting.
Yeah. Love it. I was having some questions about how exactly, I was trying to visualize how is the magma actually getting to the surface? Like, what's it doing? Is it like prying between all the rock layers above it, or is it like a wave of heat that is moving up, you know, like the rock at the bottom gets cool, but the heat yeah, and I'm not entirely sure exactly how it's working. I guess I've done a little bit of research on it already, and it seems like maybe it follows natural cracks in the rock. But apparently it actually will build reservoirs of magmas. And in the case of our 1980 eruption, you know, something made that reservoir start to grow and then led to the eruption that we had. But there's so many mysteries in around this, and the changing chemical the changing composition of the rock. You know, well, why was there a basalt flow from a composite volcano? You know, just fascinating stuff. Sorry, I just heard a cat hit the floor. It was a big boom. Kathleen, how about you? Did you have any questions come up or observations or
thing about the flow part, what caused that, and then why those two times was it different? Then what changed that caused that difference so that it was a different type of flow those two times? That's very curious to me. I also wonder, tubes are, well, they're horizontal. They're running horizontally that we're seeing in these pictures. But the basalt columns like in the gorge, and I know there's someplace else in Washington that there's those basalt columns. Why are some vertical? How did that happen? And what caused that to form that way versus horizontal like this? This I understand from
So
your
this, okay, so the lava tubes are a function of flowing rock, right? They occur when the lava is hot. The columnar basalt that you see in the gorge in like eastern Washington, that is a result of huge sheets of homogeneous rock. So no lava tubes, nothing, just huge sheets of the same thickness of lava that all cooled at the same time. And that hexagonal pattern is the natural pattern that happens when it's all cooling. You'll see that in mud sometimes, actually, where it'll form similar patterns. But it's one of those things that's got to be the conditions have to be just right for that to happen. So even though we have, those are called flood basalts because they flooded the landscape for hundreds of miles. And so it only will happen when you have, if I remember correctly, it only happens with flood basalts. You're not going to get it with these flows that are moving like rivers. Like you don't see columnar basalts in Hawaii, as far as I know, because it's flowing in these channels instead of flooding across the landscape and making a big sheet.
well,
And we have the
PBS,
columns at the waterfalls.
yeah,
There's,
Yeah.
well,
Yeah.
there's in Eastern Washington, PBS did a show on those, and evidently people come from all over the world who study that kind of thing because what happened there is very unique and it's not common. I mean, it's not a common thing, and what we have there is a very unique thing that happened.
Yeah.
Just interesting, the different formations, I guess, that it makes too. Huh. Can I ask you one more question, please? The
Mhm.
trees, the lava trees and the tree molds, that's two different things. And the molds are when the tree is gone and the hole is there. Is that correct? And the lava tree,
They're both the same, actually.
they are this, okay.
They're formed, yeah, they're formed the same. Let's see if I can get it to back up. There we go. So the formation, the original formation, step one is the same for both. The only difference is that in step two for the lava trees, the lava recedes before it solidifies. And so it's the part you see is just what was wrapped around the trunk. And the part two for tree molds, the lava stayed up high. And so you does that make sense? I probably didn't say so A to B is one path and A to C is a different path, but they both started with A.
Yep.
Okay.
That makes sense. Thank you.